Hello everyone. Today I thought we'd talk about a newer case that's taken the headlines, and that is the murder of 39-year-old Eric Richens and his wife, who has been arrested and charged with his murder. So let's just take a dive into this one. On May 13th of 1982, Eric Richens was born to Linda and Jean Richens. His parents would then go on to have two daughters, making Eric the big brother of the family, and he was said to have loved his sisters fiercely. The family was originally from Bountiful, Utah, and Eric grew up as a Mormon in the LDS church on a cattle ranch where he'd help mending fences, hauling hay, and feeding the animals. He was described as being naturally athletic, playing all types of sports and becoming a master hunter and marksman. He loved his family and was essentially your all-American man. After graduating from Woodcross High School, Eric went to Mexico City to serve his 2-year mission, and during this time, he learned to speak Spanish fluently. In 2011, Eric would then graduate from the University of Utah with a bachelor's in international studies and a minor in Spanish. From there, Eric and his friend Kouri Richins would then start their own business together called C&E Stone Masonry, which ended up being very successful. They do intricate stonework, pavers, and tile work for high-end homes, and as you can see from the photos on their Instagram, they did beautiful work. And the two friends would also end up buying what are called mutual life insurance policies on each other, which essentially meant that if one of them died, the other would be able to buy them out of the company. Family would go on to say that there was never a dull moment when Eric was around. His obituary saying, and I quote, "Whether it was him showing up to a family dinner with no socks or sleeves on his shirt because he had to make an emergency bathroom stop along the way, or him calling to tell you that he rolled his four-wheeler for the umpteenth time, it's stuck and he needs to come get him. Eric loved to have fun and was always the life of the party. He owned almost every motorized toy possible, from four-wheelers and side-by-sides to trucks and snowmobiles. Because of this, he of course holds the Richens family record for most rolls and collisions of motorized vehicles, as well as the most stitches received from a single incident, 200 on his face to be exact," end quote. And Eric wasn't only a joy to be around, he was also described as being incredibly reliable, one of those people that would do anything for you if you needed it. He was said to have loved fully, laughed loudly, and lived life to reckless abandon. And I've spent so much time in the beginning of this video talking about who Eric was as a person because I really wanted to drive home how incredible of a person Eric was. An incredible person who anyone would have wanted in their life for a lifetime, who brought joy and happiness to those who were around him, and it seems like he took care of those around him, friends and family alike. He seemed to be an incredibly unique person. And I wanted to drive that home to you so that when I eventually tell you what happened to him, you would understand what a loss to this world it was when Eric died, and such a loss to his family and friends' worlds it was. All because of one evil, sick bitch. Eric would eventually be introduced to a woman named Kouri Richins, and he'd be introduced to her by a family friend named Linda King, who worked at a local Home Depot that he frequented. Linda saying, and I quote, "He was the sweetest guy. To me, he seemed like one of my kids. Seriously, he was just the sweetest guy. He was so nice to all the employees and to everybody," end quote. Now, Kouri ended up working as a cashier at that Home Depot, and she was said to have been shy. She was around 6 years younger than he was. But it seemed that, the two of them hit it off. They went on some dates, and after that, it seemed like they had a fairy tale relationship. Linda saying, and I quote, "It just seemed beautiful," end quote. But as we know, what people sometimes show outwardly and what they show on social media isn't always the truth. After everything, after the years went by, there was a lot of shit happening that we will later talk about. But before all of such shit happened, the two of them would eventually go on to live in Kamas, Utah, which is a beautiful, picturesque town set between Salt Lake City and the Uinta-Wasatch Cache National Forest, known as the Gateway to the Uintas. And on June 15th of 2013, Eric and Kouri would end up getting married in the backyard of that home. The couple would eventually go on to have 3 sons, and it really seemed like Eric was living his dream life. He had a successful business, he had a beautiful wife, he had 3 young boys that he loved even more. And remember, family was everything to Eric. But after Eric and Kouri got married, Kouri was no longer working at Home Depot because she had married up. Her husband had a successful business, so Kouri was now on the pursuit of starting her own career. And she decided that she was going to delve into the real estate industry and buying and flipping homes. And this business that Kouri decided to create for herself, buying and flipping homes, would actually put her into a lot of debt. Which, when you are buying real estate and you're in that industry, it kind of comes with the territory being in debt. But it seemed like Kouri did not have the funds to pay back this debt. And it started with Kouri owing a lot of money to Eric, at a sum of $500,000 that we would later find out that she had stolen from him, which this money came from all different forms that she had taken, such as a line of home equity credit that Kouri had already spent, money she had taken out of Eric's own bank account, there was credit card debt, as well as money that she had taken from Eric's own business. Kouri would eventually also end up owing about $190,000 in state and federal taxes and $1.8 million to lenders. And you think in the wake of all of this perfect life that Kouri had gotten herself entangled in, that she would appreciate it all. But things were happening behind the scenes that would eventually come out to be a lot darker than any of us even know. Because it seemed that over the years, as things went downhill in their relationship, Eric was trying everything he could to still make their relationship work, and he wanted to do this mainly for their children. It seemed like he didn't want their children to grow up in a broken home. Also, you have to consider in the Mormon religion, it is frowned upon to get divorced. But it's also said that Eric was very suspicious that his wife Kouri was having an affair with someone their entire 9 years of marriage. But it got worse than that. Because meanwhile, this unassuming brunette Utah wife was in contact with a person of the initials CL. And this person named CL had multiple charges of possession with controlled substances with intent to distribute, possession of drug paraphernalia, and possession of controlled substances. Not the type of person you'd think would be associated with Kouri Richins. But it turns out that Kouri was allegedly in contact with this mysterious CL person in the first place because she contacted them asking for pain medication for one of her investors who was allegedly suffering from back pain. But you'd think this investor would just go to their own doctor and, get prescribed back pain if they were having such bad back pain issues, not go to Kouri Richins to ask a drug dealer for back pain medication. But no, Kouri Richins was there to save the day. And CL would eventually go on to tell the police that Kouri had contacted them back in January and February of 2022, making this request for this back pain medication. On February 12th, Kouri reached out to CL to get the pills. CL then reached out to a dealer who was then able to get hydrocodone pills that were then eventually delivered to Kouri. 2 days later, on Valentine's Day, Kouri would end up making a sandwich for Eric and leaving the sandwich on the seat of his truck with a love note. Cute, right? However, immediately after Eric ate the sandwich, he suffered a horrible allergic reaction, which was so bad he almost stopped breathing, and he had to grab his son's EpiPen that was in a car and use it on himself so that he didn't die. After that, Eric took some Benadryl and took a nap for several hours, which after he woke up, he ended up texting a friend saying that he believed his wife had tried to poison him. But this wasn't the first time that Kouri had given Eric something to drink or eat, and he thought that his wife was trying to poison him, because it turns out that years prior on a trip to Greece, Kouri had given Eric a cocktail that she had made him, and then he was violently ill afterwards. So there seemed to be a pattern forming, and the family has reported that Eric had told them that if anything happened to him, Kouri was to blame. And it gets worse because between 2015 and 2017, Kouri purchased 4 different life insurance policies on Eric, totaling $2 million. And I think it's pretty much assumed that Eric had no clue about these life insurance policies. Well, and I don't know why it wasn't questioned why someone would need 4 different life insurance policies on their significant other. I feel like there should be something called into question when someone tries to take this many life insurance policies out on someone. But alas, Eric would find out about something, and he would find out about the vast amount of money that his wife had stolen from him. On top of all of this money that Kouri had stolen or borrowed from Eric, it turns out that she'd also apparently forged his initials on this document to take power of attorney on his behalf, and then took out $250,000 against their home equity. As I said, she also stole money out of Eric's personal account, out of his business account, so it was supposed to be used to pay taxes. And Eric confronted her about all of this, and then she promised and pleaded that she was going to pay him back. But it seemed at this point Eric was starting to get weary of his wife, and rightfully so. Because in October of 2020, Eric ended up speaking to a divorce attorney as well as an estate planning attorney. But that's not all Kouri was doing behind Eric's back, though. Remember how I said when Eric and Cody had started this masonry business, they had taken out life insurance policies on each other? Well, it turns out that in January of 2022, Kouri had secretly logged into Eric's life insurance account and changed Cody's name to her name on those policies. Thankfully, though, Eric got alerted to this change and went back and changed them himself. That same exact month, Kouri ended up filing for another $100,000 life insurance policy on her husband. So that's 5 life insurance policies now on someone. That's insane to me. But at this point in time, Eric was also making some moves behind his wife's back. Because remember, he had told his family he thought that she was trying to kill him, trying to poison him. He'd also caught her stealing money, she was forging his name, she was changing policies, so clearly he knew something was up to some degree. So unbeknownst to Kouri, Eric went and changed his will, and he also completely cut her out of it. He then went and made what is called a living trust, and he made his sister Katie the trustee, funneling all of his assets and his money to this trust so that if anything happened to him, Katie would be the one to determine what happened to his money as per his instructions. So a lot of back-end stuff was happening at this point, and it seems like Eric was finally thinking about divorce. The family attorney later saying, and I quote, "Eric was considering divorce at the time he died. It was something he and Kouri had both discussed. They had argued over financial issues and both appeared to be a little more realistic about the prospect," end quote. But Eric would never make it to divorcing Kouri. So let's jump back to that sandwich. Well, after that sandwich didn't kill Eric, between February 11th and 26th, Kouri went back to CL and told them that those pills were not strong enough for her investor's back pain and she needed some of that Michael Jackson stuff, asking CL to get her some fentanyl. CL went back to the person that they'd get their stuff from and eventually acquired 15 to 30 fentanyl pills, which eventually were given to Kouri. Now, keep in mind, according to the DEA, it only takes about 2 milligrams of fentanyl to kill someone. It is said to be 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine. It is dangerous, and Kouri had just gotten her hands on a full bag of it. Now, keep in mind, right before Eric's death, his wife, Kouri, owed a lot of money to a lot of different people, including himself, and she seemed to have a plan to spend another $2 million. On the morning of March 3rd of 2022, Kouri would be on the phone with both the IRS as well as her lenders discussing her debts. And she would be on these phone calls for several hours, apparently. You see, Kouri had found this mansion, this unfinished mansion in the middle of this beautiful, picturesque landscape in Midway, Utah. And she decided that she was going to buy this $2 million mansion, flip it, and make a profit on it to pay back all of the debt she owed. So she had this big, elaborate plan to basically fix all of her problems. But when she approached Eric, telling him that she wanted to go another $2 million in debt, Eric told her no. And rightfully so, because I would have told her the same damn thing, that is a stupid idea, that you're going to be going $2 million more in debt when clearly you couldn't handle all the other things you did that got you into this debt in the first place. But personally, I think when Kouri heard that no, that is when she finally snapped. But honestly, the fact that she'd already attempted to allegedly poison him on multiple other occasions, she was doing a ton of other shady shit behind his back, trying to change policies to get herself money if he died, I don't think it would have taken much for her to snap. But in Kouri's mind, it seemed like that was probably the only way that she was going to fix all her issues and get out of this debt. And so she decided that Eric was standing in her way. Now, again, that is just my opinion, and it seems to be opinion of a lot of other people's, but this is when things would change. Because later that night into the next morning, Kouri claims that Eric was in bed and she mixed him up a Moscow Mule. Kouri would later then tell authorities that she'd made Eric this drink because they were celebrating her closing on that $2 million mansion. Oddly enough, the mansion that Eric told her no to buying, so why would they be celebrating it if Eric had said no? Now, Kouri claims that she ended up giving Eric this cocktail and he went to bed. However, according to the affidavit, it does say that Eric had 1 shot of alcohol and a THC gummy. I'm sure the story is somewhere in between all of that. Either way, Kouri then says that Eric went to bed and she went to go sleep in one of her son's bedrooms because they were having nightmares. But then somewhere around 3 a.m., Kouri ended up waking up and going back to the master bedroom where she found her husband, Eric, unresponsive and cold to the touch. She then claimed she immediately called 911 and attempted CPR. But according to all the legal documents, it seems that emergency responders don't believe that Kouri ended up performing any CPR on Eric because there was blood coming out of his mouth and that this blood seemed undisturbed. Kouri had also told authorities that she had left her phone plugged into her bedroom. However, investigators found that it had been locked and unlocked several times and showed movement before 911 had been called, where she had said that she had immediately called 911. So there's basically inconsistencies in what she says happened. But just like that, 39-year-old Eric Richens was dead. Toxicology would determine that Eric had 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system. But Kouri wouldn't be arrested. She wouldn't be arrested for another year. And in very much so Lori Vallow fashion, the very next day after Eric's death, Kouri held a party at their home to celebrate. But not celebrate Eric's life, but to celebrate closing that $2 million mansion. Just absolutely fucking sick. 2 days after Eric's death, Kouri hired a locksmith to drill into Eric's safe because inside of the safe was around $125,000 to $165,000 in cash. And Kouri wanted access to that cash. Now, court records show that Eric's sister told Kouri to leave that safe alone, and because of this, Kouri ended up freaking out and punching Eric's sister in the face and the neck. Sheriff's deputies would end up responding to this incident and called the attorney for Eric Richens' estate, and this is when Kouri was finally made aware of that living trust that Eric had made. You see, Kouri was under this assumption that after her husband died, she was going to be getting millions of dollars. In fact, because she was Eric Richens' wife, she thought she was going to inherit over $3 million. But because Eric had went and changed his will and made this living trust, Kouri wasn't getting a fucking dime of it. It turns out that Eric had also clearly stated in his will, and I quote, "Kouri Richins shall not be allowed to serve as trustee of my trust or any trust established under the terms of my trust," end quote. A big fuck you to Kouri. And after all of this, Kouri decided she was going to fight for what she thought was rightfully hers. She went right ahead and decided to try to sue Eric's estate, as well as asking for compensation of $300,000 for what she described as unjust enrichment of the trustees. In response, Eric's sister ended up hiring a private investigator to follow Kouri. Now, after hearing all of this about Kouri throwing a party at the house, suing Eric's sister for the money, it really did seem like Kouri was a grieving widow, suffering the death of her husband, right? Well, apparently she was very devastated and very heartbroken and grieving, because around a year after Eric's death, she went ahead and wrote and published a book called Are You With Me? The synopsis for the book reading, and I quote, "Are You With Me is written to create peace and comfort for children who have lost a loved one. It's to reassure children that although your loved one is not present, their presence anywhere exists. They will walk through your life with you as if they were here," end quote. Now keep in mind, she did this after allegedly murdering her husband and then not being able to access any of his funds. So in my opinion, she went ahead and wrote a book to profit off of the murder of her own husband because she couldn't squeeze a penny from the family. Absolutely fucking sick and just absolutely crazy. After publishing this book, Kouri went ahead and contacted ABC4's Good Things Utah in an attempt to go on and promote her book on that show, and she did eventually get her 5 minutes of fame, going right on screen and lying her ass off.
And it's only been a year. How did you process and say you go from processing death to I need to write a book and help others?
You know, I just watched the struggle that my kids were going through, and I actually, I went on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and trying to find something that we could use to cope at nights. Nights are the hardest, it seems like, for everybody when, dealing with anything, but I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night, and I just could not find anything. I couldn't find anything that really, suited them or helped them find comfort and peace, and so, I was like, let's just write one.
But only a month later, on May 8th of 2023, Kouri would finally be arrested and charged with aggravated murder, as well as 3 counts of possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute. It would take over a year for her to be arrested for the murder of her husband. Now, at this point in time, she's not entered a plea deal, but she is due back in court on June 12th, which, if there is any more information that comes out on this, I will try to keep you all updated. But basically, when you really think of it, Eric died for no reason. For no other reason that he had a greedy psycho wife who wanted his money and couldn't appreciate the life that she had been given. This woman could have had it all. She had married who seemed to be an incredible man, an incredible person who everyone loved to be around, and she took that for granted, and she just didn't care. She just wanted his money, and when she couldn't get what she wanted, she killed him. Allegedly, don't come for me. But she didn't only destroy his life, she destroyed his family's life. She has left their 3 children without a father and their mother in jail. Just what a sick fucking person. But what I want to know is how you all feel about this case. I'm just flabbergasted that she had the balls to do any of this, especially considering she had it made. She could have had it made. I think it just takes a sick kind of person to do something like this, especially to go and try to profit off of his death afterwards and create this book to try to get money, because she can't get money from the family because he at least had the wherewithal before he was murdered to get all of the money away from her. And you know what? At the end of the day, I really feel bad for the children because they're now essentially orphans. And Eric is dead. He didn't deserve to die. It seemed like he was trying to do everything that was right. And I think we talk a lot about these cases where women are murdered by their significant others, but we don't talk a lot about when men are murdered by their significant others. And it does happen, and it happens quite often. But I think we do need to talk more about these cases where men are murdered by their significant others, because they do happen, and men are just as vulnerable. So at the end of the day, I think we should all keep Eric and his family in our thoughts, because again, he didn't deserve this. His family doesn't deserve what happened to them either, or what happened to him. And I'm just glad that Kouri finally was caught and she is now being prosecuted, and there will be justice in this. As I said, I will continue to keep you all updated in this case when information comes out. With that, if you're not subscribed, I definitely recommend you hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with this case and other cases that I cover. If there are any cases you want me to cover, let me know down below and I will look into them. And with that, I hope you all stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.